Hello, universe.
It's Jenny again.
And Matt once more.
We're so excited today to be joined again by one of our favorite people. We had an amazing conversation with him a couple weeks ago.
Yep, and then the universe.
And the Wi-Fi just dropped out up here in the mountains, and it wasn't saved, and it just lives in our hearts, which was amazing. But we also we're not going to miss the chance to talk to Raf again. So we're very excited that he'll be joining us any moment. And we hope everybody watching now in this moment, hello, and in future moments is having a beautiful, peaceful day. Here is Raf.
Man, the myth, the legend has joined the conversation.
We'll wait for him to magically appear in our virtual. Here he comes.
There he is. Oh, appropriately attired as always.
What's up?
Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm hanging in there, just getting set up. You know, it takes a lot of setup to be such a bum and show up late to this party. I'm sorry, folks.
You're not late.
Perfection takes time, my friend.
Can't rush art. Cannot rush art.
So are you like in one of the many amazing, like the back of Raf's pickup truck is like a magical Dr. Seuss book we discovered recently when he and his beautiful girlfriend Melanie visited us, full of things that I could not even begin to list, and I'm wondering if like where you're sitting right now is involved in that.
The magical pickup truck is here.
There it is.
All right.
We got I got the solar panels out right now. Just cooling.
Nice.
That's about it. Just hanging out. Did my therapy this morning. I was just kind of getting my day kicking off now at the crack of noon with y'all. So, you know, early
All right.
riser.
You have no children. It's the middle of a pandemic.
None that I know of, at least.
Life
No,
is
that's a bad
good,
joke.
right?
That's a bad joke.
Hi, Manny. Hi, Jen. I see
Hi,
all
everyone.
these beautiful friends coming. So speaking of therapy, obviously when we do these podcasts, we don't have any planned agenda. There is no agenda. I think it was Ram Dass, I heard him say recently, what does it mean to be a safe space? And he said it means to not have an agenda with other people. So anyway, here we are with no agenda with our beloved Raf. Raf, I hear a lot of people and a lot of discussion, and in my own head too, about yoga and therapy, yoga as therapy, yoga not as therapy. And since you mentioned it, for you and your own self, what are those two things and where do they combine? Do they combine?
I'm going to try to be careful in answering this, just because I don't want to speak as a clinician. I can only speak as a practitioner, and it's not a be-all, end-all. There is yoga therapy. There are formats of yoga that are therapeutic. One of the things I find is whether moving my body or moving the breath, there's a benefit happening. What's up, Dan? You know, so for me, I incorporate talk therapy. I incorporate mindfulness in the way of being present with the discomfort. But what works for me is not going to translate to everybody else. So keeping that in mind is important, because I don't want to pitch yoga as something like, oh, you do this and you're going to feel great all the time. I find it's more about being transparent. I think that's more important than trying to fake the funk or trying to capitalize on yoga, because I was talking to a studio owner yesterday, and it's hard to pitch or sell something that's not really tangible. If you spend time on the mat, you will notice the benefits of the practice, whereas if you're new to the practice and someone says, hey, this is therapeutic, or hey, works great for anxiety, depression, or what, you start to set up people, at least I find that it's a setup for failure, because you might not get that off the first bat. You might end up getting, you might find that this is actually aggravating. I've taught restorative yoga classes. If you haven't taken restorative yoga, there is no sweating, there's no movement, there's no grooving. There is stillness, though. And for some people, that is the worst thing.
Infinitely harder.
It's way harder. So, that's my spiel on yoga as therapy. I did do my 500-hour based in yoga therapy and incorporating some of the fundamentals of how yoga is therapeutic, but being very clear that I'm not a clinician. I would love to and eventually work and use my educational benefits to become a yoga therapist. But for the time being, this is what I do. And it's really, I call it intrinsic altruism, because I hold space for others, but really I'm holding space for me. And so that's really what it comes down to. I don't know if that's a long-winded way to answer that.
No,
not
such
at all.
thing.
It's your way of answering it. I love it.
Yeah.
There is an element, though, I think you're talking about that exists both in talk therapy and in yoga, which is really you're sitting with yourself and you're being with yourself and you're hearing the thoughts that are coming up. And absolutely, that is the most difficult stuff in the world to deal with. If it wasn't, we wouldn't really be needing this, right? Because you could just sort of process these and your subconscious wouldn't move it all around and push it all away and all that other fun stuff that comes with having this monkey mind with some sort of enlightened connection. But I love that. Go back to that intrinsic altruism you were talking about. Expand on that. I haven't heard that one before.
Well, excuse me. I live on the set of Fast and the Furious, so forgive the extra stuff. Intrinsic altruism to me, I mean, I don't want to come off as some savior or having like a savior complex. Like, I've tried that route. I really, really did. I'm like, I fucking can't do that work for others. However, and again, in just an effort to be transparent with other people, sharing that I do this because it helps me is more beneficial for others, I think, because then we connect in common ground versus saying, oh, this guy's got it figured out. He's the teacher. I'm the new student. No, like, I'm working shoulder to shoulder with everyone else that's struggling. I just happen to have been offered an opportunity a little while back to lead classes. And, even throughout this whole pandemic, don't care about the politics of it right now. It's the invitation to share in people's homes has been something that I don't take lightly. And even if it's just a small community of people I share with, to be trusted with that, I mean, again, it's not me pitching it like I got it figured out. I'm good to go. It's about just sharing the idea that, hey, you might be struggling with this. Maybe you're not, but I am. And this is what's helped me to this point. Again, just because I'm pitching it doesn't mean that people are going to pick it up and run with it, but it might. And even if it's just a single person that it resonates with, okay, that'll do. Outside of the monetary gain, which if we're doing yoga, let's be real, we're not going to buy a Mercedes Benz. We might, I don't know.
A few,
maybe.
Somebody wins the lotto.
You could be bigger and badger, I suppose, but then we could have the conversation about, what we're really there for.
Yep.
And
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that when I met you, Raf, many, many years ago now, I couldn't even count how many. It was at a moment still in yoga where I think the party line was like, if you're teaching yoga, you need to be like a bright, shiny, guru-like individual. And anybody that asks you a question, you have the answer on the tip of your tongue, and you know all these different tools, and you're like, you've got it figured out, like you said. And I found it so refreshing, Matt and I. When we met you, it was really like one of those first moments with United We Own that we felt like we met somebody else that was experiencing this the way we were, which was that like we have the opposite of it figured out, but we're figuring it out. And like that was
whatever that means.
So feel that it's been interesting for me. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. It's been interesting for me to witness in the last few years a kind of a upside downing in a lot of yoga culture to flipping the other way, and to it becoming now very much like, if you know, like very common now to share your story of your struggle or your journey. And I'm wondering, for you, in your own experience, where do you find a line between honoring what you've been through, which is a lot, and how you're moving through it without being your story, and like, you know, getting hooked into that like personality aspect?
How, let me try to understand it better. You mean, how do I separate the story from the practice, or help me understand a little better?
Sure. Well, for me, there's like this stuff that I've lived through and that I've moved through, mostly with the help of yoga, but other experiences too. And then there's the part of me that has to walk a fine line of, like in the work we do, sharing practice back. I'll just speak about like eating disorder recovery as an example. You know, when I share practice back with other people in eating disorder recovery, I connect with my own past experience with it in order to you know, be on that, like, I'm with you, I'm still working on it. But at the same time, it can be very easy to backslide into that. Even though I might have moved through it, touching back into it by guiding other people can kind of like start to pull me back, and then I can start to identify as myself with that, which kind of like stops me up a little bit. And I'm just curious what that feels like for you.
This hits home, and I'll tell you in a big way why. I was helping, I was blessed with invitations to different organizations, and one of them was working with at-risk youth. And I had spent time in different facilities as a youth, as a troubled youth. So they call it troubled, I call it misunderstood, but that's fine. And going back to teach at a church that I spent time as a child. I grew up in Lutheran church. I was an acolyte, so like an altar boy. And
Catholic, I understand.
Subsequently, I was married at the same church.
Whoa.
So this a whole mess of
A
karmic,
bunch of circles completing themselves.
and so I taught at this place for, I'm going to say no more than 8 weeks, I think. And I had to stop because these kids reminded me of where I was in that point in their lives. And the frustration and the emotions, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. It's not that I don't want to help. I just find it like overwhelming to me, because of, as I actively reparent myself as a child, or, you know, from my childhood, I don't even know really how to word that. It brings up a lot of emotions, a lot of pain, a lot of distrust, one of the two, in the system. And so I actually had to step back and say, I'm sorry that I can't offer you the space that I really intended to, because it's making me backtrack now. And I think boundaries are important. I think that leads us to like acknowledging like, hey, certain things we're just not in the place to work with quite yet. That doesn't mean that we can't offer them that space, but it just means that our self-care, we have to be a little more grounded in us and who we are in our place in healing. Because if we use stock market terminology, if you compare your 2-month portfolio to somebody's 10-year portfolio, you're going to feel shitty, but the reality is they were a 2-month portfolio at one point too. So yeah, it's hard, because working with veterans, much easier than it is to work with kids. Although I do still work with kids in the special needs community. Working with at-risk youth really was a hard one. So yeah, I totally get that. It will slide you back, but our practice, like tides, it ebbs and flows. So some phase of our practice is going to be winning. Like, yeah, I feel great. Woo, I accomplished so much today on the mat. And some days you're like,
Don't even want to get on.
okay, I did my breath for the day. Done. And so, I really think it comes down to just being okay with the ebbs and flows of a practice. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
the flows of
very
the practice in life, right?
important
Cheers.
to say and hear. Cheers. Which goes back to how much I love that, you've never been a person that has ever claimed, to have some kind of wisdom or access that, nobody else can have. I would say probably anybody that knows you would put the word humble right at the beginning of that sentence.
Well, and authentic, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's what Ginny's tapping into, is that you've always offered an authentic experience. And I think that's what people are interested in. And jumping back to what you were saying about going into people's homes. I was in production, and they used to talk about the differences in the mediums. And TV was a very intimate medium because you're inviting your friends, these people, into your home. It's a special relationship. It's different than going out of your home into the theater or whatever. That's movie or live. So I love that you found that to be a rewarding experience, because I think it speaks very much to like who you are, and that people feel very connected to you as a friend, right? So anyway, just sort of my observation.
I appreciate that. No, it really is. I mean, I find it, going back to what Jenny asked before about like how when we met, it was like, oh, the guru and the lineages. And there is a fantastic Instagrammer called Colin Yogin, one of the two, but he posts these really like, I guess, spicy memes about things because, you end up contending with the fact that I don't want to be a gatekeeper. I'm not the source of people's freedom. I'm not the source of their liberation. It's up to others to pick up the tools and use said tools, because if you don't, what happens? You end up with people getting accustomed to saying, oh, you are the reason I go to practice, which is fine. I'm honored. I'm privileged if that's the case, but that also implies that we're missing the mark a little bit. And the ego loves it. Oh my God. Oh, that's my yoga teacher. And I love it. Yes, but really, I'm just kind of like throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping some of it fucking sticks for people. And I don't know who said it. He said, like, a good yoga teacher will become unemployed if you give the practice effectively, because people then can take that practice and evolve with that, grow with it.
That.
So if you end up becoming injured through your, if your physical practice is only physical, and you hit the mat and you're religious about the mat, and that, great, it's fantastic, buenas, and, but what happens when you're injured? What happens when, your rotator cuff's bummed, your back is messed up, I can't practice yoga this week.
Yeah.
You mean you can't practice one of the 8 limbs of yoga? That's fine. I'm not trying to be a stickler here. I'm not trying to push lineages on you. I'm just saying, so we're just not going to consider breathing. We're not going to consider any sort of introspection. No? Okay, fine. And
But
so
don't you think they lead to one another, that like one, kind of ends up somehow, even if you stay really focused on asana, and we've all met those people who are sort of hyper into their physical practice, that ultimately it starts to trickle, it starts to leak into these other places, and you start to absorb some of the, some of that sort of, I guess, just observational stuff that's happening as you, instead of just feeling the muscle, you start to feel more of the subtle body, and then that starts to lead to feelings of energy, and then suddenly you're like, well, if I'm feeling all these things, where is this energy coming from? And then you start to notice synchronicity, and it starts to just sort of unfold in that way. I mean, that's been my experience, because I didn't believe in any of this stuff at all. And I used to say, like, I was a devout atheist. And I certainly had no intention of moving into any sort of a spiritual journey. But the process in and of itself just started to happen. I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on it? For me, like, it just, one sort of led into the other. And again, that ebb and flow, this would take over, that would take over. And then again, like you said, like, what the sort of ultimate realization is, it's all your yoga practice, whatever it is. even if it's this moment and it's it's frustrating internet or whatever it is, right? That's all your practice.
Yes. I had a teacher that taught philosophy to us in our 200-hour, Madan Mohan. And he said, don't let anybody, and this is me after I just fucking said this, don't let anybody tell you that your practice of bhakti work, which is like, dedication,
Praise, yeah.
Is any different, is any better or any worse than your asana practice, or whatever it is that speaks to you, because just like therapy and yoga will not work for everybody, that's just it. This is a Swiss Army knife of tools, and you can pick up what you need and use it for the appropriate time of your life that you might need it in. So yeah, it does lend itself. Like, I started in restorative. I started in goddess pose on bolsters, blocks, and for months I was like, this is yoga? I can do this. I can do this. It's hard to sit still. And then I found, the teacher saying, hey, Raf, there are the yoga classes. I'm like, are you kicking me out? It's like, no, but just letting you know that if you wanted to try maybe gentle flow, and I tried gentle flow Saturday morning. I remember falling next to pregnant ladies and cursing and hating, and this is bullshit. I hate this. And then eventually it was like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this. There's an encouragement. Obviously, community is important. I look back and I'm like, wow, I really didn't value the time in a confined space with people breathing in their breath compared to what it is now.
Yeah. And
then within a year and a half, I ended up discovering power yoga, or whatever you want to call it. And there's the Lotus inspired and all these fun things, and they were fun. They were fucking fun. I figured out handstands. I figured out the forearm stands. I figured out all these things. And one day injury reminded me, like, Raph, bro, you're a big dude. You're not, like no little shrimp, bro. Like, you got to be mindful of your body. And I ended up hurting my shoulders more because I was pushing so hard. And injury reminded me to get back to it. What is it, Kiss? Keep it simple, stupid, sweetie, whatever you want to say. Because going back to restorative, going back to my breath, going back to my presence with discomfort has offered me more than me figuring out how to stand on my head or my hands or my forearms. Those things are beautiful because play is important. There is effort, there is ease, right? We find somewhere in the middle where we do this little number. So that's why, yes, it will lend itself, but that's why I always I try to encourage, start easier, start with something more available, so that way, even if you're underwhelmed, it's sustainable, it's accessible, and if you have sustainability and accessibility, you offer safety. And we kind of want to continue to do that in our practice, because there's not much. A safe space to me is fictitious. A safe space to me in my heart is like, where are you good in the chaos? Because the bubble that we're living in this country and developed world, and not to be a negative Nancy, sorry to Nancy's out there, buzzkill, let's call it a buzzkill. It's just that, like, it's not about practicing when everything is good and it smells like incense and everything is chill in the room with the chill music. My yoga practice is what happens out there on the street, outside the door, off the mat. So kind of, it becomes a journey. But like you said, Matt, I had lost my touch with spirituality, having seen what I witnessed in Afghanistan. I was like, there's no way there's anything divine in the world. And then discovering that actually there is, it just takes time to really allow myself to witness it. That's the practice. But again, that's not for everyone, because some folks aren't ready for that. I understand that a majority of the world is not ready to sit with themselves. I get it. I fucking get it. That's why I've my yoga practice, as ridiculous as it sounds, I know that all the teachers before me are like flipping in their graves when I say, like, I stick to memes. I am What up, bud? Um,
Hey,
What's up?
Mariska.
so kind of like this, we have 15 seconds or 10 seconds of people's attention span now. I gotta try my best here, because if I can't get you on a mat for an hour, if I can't get you to take a breath, oh, maybe a reframing of something that hasn't been presented before. Because look, if it
Scramble your
takes,
synapse a bit.
yeah, if it takes a yoga teacher to bring up this shit, especially a stoner yoga teacher like this, we gotta really like start to consider, like, is he crazy, or is it really actually that way? And so, and again, it ebbs and flows. So I think,
As my mother always said, just because you're paranoid and crazy doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
hmm,
I actually want to jump back to what you were saying about the safe space being fictitious, because I really like that. And you said, you were like, not to be a buzzkill about it, but actually I like to spin on that, of that creating your safe space is fictitious. It's coming out of your imagination and your, so whether or not a room is a safe space or not, or nature is a safe space or not, is all up in your subjective opinion.
yes.
And therefore it's fictitious. Because when we first moved here, we would walk down into the deep forest and there would be a feeling of unsafe, lack of safety in deep nature. And now I go in there and there's a feeling of incredible safety there. And again, like, the safe space is fictitious. It was an unsafe space until I was able to create this feeling of safety there.
Excuse me.
My wife disagrees, which is fine.
Well, no, I'm not going to disagree. But like, okay. So part of what I love about this United We Om crew is that most of our conversations are like this, where we're like, let's just like, we get into it with each other in a loving way. And it's what's really interesting to me in this conversation and in general is like that super fine line between owning your own shit, which we're all talking about, and, caring for people around us. And both of those things have come up a lot in this conversation. So I'm just really curious about, what the balance is of how we acknowledge that for ourselves, if we're understanding you right, Raf, that everything outside of us is a neutral prop. Like a lot of yoga would reference that would be the case, that it's 100% inner work in many ways. But in the wellness space and the yoga space, and even as an organization, we have a lot of conversations around how do you cultivate a space where people feel like they belong. And I'm curious, Raf, to hear like what that means to you, because I can imagine that you might have a very different experience walking into a wellness space than I. So although, you're cultivating your own space inside, and I hear you saying like, people might say, oh, I'm cultivating a safe space, but that doesn't mean it's going to feel safe for you. But like, what are those things?
To me now, it's almost like when someone says, trust me. Like, the first thing you say is like, right? Whenever someone's like, I'm cultivating a safe space, you're like, oh God.
Trust me, what's the worst that could happen? A lot can happen. So, all right, all right, how do again, I try to choose my words carefully, not because I want to curate, but because I want to be inclusive.
Yeah.
I've been blessed, again, I mean it when I say it, that the opportunity to share with anybody is an honor, because people trust you to share a room where there's private yoga or in group settings. People that have historically shown up to classes come from different walks of life, different lineages, different backgrounds. I've had folks that are on this. I have people on the spectrum that have shown up to a quote unquote traditional yoga class. I've had people going through transition. I've had people from the LGBTQ community, from different religious backgrounds, and I find that, like you said, it's just me being authentic is what helps people feel a little more comfortable, especially when people are like, oh, I'm new to the practice. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, well, that makes two of us. I don't know what I'm doing either, Joe. I'm sort of new, so we'll figure this out. Safety, how I offer a safe space, again, this is prior to COVID, and is always going to be the same, is being transparent about, hey, this is what's about to happen in the class. This is what I'm offering for the class. If you need to exit the space, this is for you. You know that there are exits here and here. If you need resources here and here. I go as far as to carry, but this is not because of yoga. I carry like first aid kit, trauma kit with everything from Minions Band-Aids to chest seals. I have Narcan, I have it all, because I've had people collapse in class. I've had to call a single ambulance for a person. And so for me, safety is a little different. Safety is physical safety. Safety is being able to feel secure. And so as I practice or hold space, I'm also keeping an eye out in the space for how can I readjust, because things are going to shift moment to moment. The class's dynamic will shift. So in order for me to be effective and efficient in sharing, I'm going to have to move with that also. Because again, safe is subjective. What's safe for the spider is death for the fly. I mean, we're just trying to find a little bit of common ground for a brief moment. And just because a yoga class is an hour and 15 minutes or an hour long, that doesn't mean for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes you're going to feel great. So I think welcoming some discomfort instead of saying, hey, this is totally safe, nothing can touch you here. I can't make that promise. I really can't.
Well said. Well said.
You know, I can't make that promise. So it's,
Yeah.
I don't want to say empower. I want to remind people that they are first and only sometimes sort of either there's emotional defense, physical defense. And so reminding folks that, hey, you have what it takes to not only establish a boundary, because again, prior to COVID, it would be like, hey, and this is not for United We Own, this is only for the open level classes I was teaching at studios. Like, I offer hands-on assists. If you'd like for me to skip, I either place your hand on your abdomen. If you're in child's pose, you know, flip your palms down. If you're okay with it, flip your palms up if you want me to skip. And even to the point of, while I was about to assist, say, hey, may I assist you? Because I don't know that the answer you gave me at the beginning of class is the same answer you're going to want to give me now. And sometimes it changes. So I think honoring boundaries is super important in offering safety. But again, predictability also offers a sense of safety, because if you know what's about to happen, if I tell you, hey, we're going to explore heart openers, we're going to explore some hip openers, we're going to explore some breathing today. If any of that starts to burn, sting, pinch, burn, skip it. Do what you have to do. You know, and always reminding folks that you are your best teacher. You know you the best out of anybody. I could do a bazillion hours of yoga teacher training. I can't fucking read your mind. I can't read your body. So tell me how I can help you.
Well, see, and that's like, I think there's something that I'm hearing you say that I've experienced when I've practiced with you as my teacher. And that's that you are a person that when you are in the role of teacher, I never have a feeling that you have gone, you know, within yourself, I'll say, you know, like you are somebody that, like you are describing, stays extremely aware all the time of the people in the room and the energy in the room. And, you know, I've taken a lot of classes as a student where I feel like, you know, it can be a comfortable thing for a teacher to get into their good feeling, non-analytical mind.
Sort of presentational?
No, not presentational. No, I've done it. I did it a lot when I first taught. But like I would start practicing and breathing, and then I'm in my flow, you know, and it's sort of like everybody can come along. And that's one thing that was really striking for me the first time I practiced with you in your restorative class, that you know, your energy was extremely calm and soothing, but it wasn't at the expense of your moment to moment awareness of slight things, like somebody shifting their legs very slightly on a bolster, and like me doing that, and you coming over and saying like, is this uncomfortable? Like, is there a way I can make this more comfortable? And I think that's really rare. And so I loved hearing the way you describe the responsibility you feel like you hold for that space, because now it makes sense to me. why you're a very special teacher in that way, which you are. And now we all feel really comfortable going to Raf's yoga class because we know that he has he's got a whole first aid kit. he's ready to resuscitate me when my blood pressure nabs me in the middle.
Yeah, I like that people say, "Oh, Raf, you're so soothing in class." I'm like, I wish I felt that way because I got spicy armpits. I got spicy hands right now. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I feel nervous as shit, but I'm glad you enjoyed, so that's good.
But let's all hear that because, like, I will say that you are a teacher that is very loved. And I think that we can all be brave by learning from your example that, we are enough to just be who we really authentically are. And that is what allows a door to open for other people, feeling that we're in the room with an actual real person. And there's one other thing that you mentioned a few minutes ago, and it's been sticking with me because it's something that I really wanted to talk with you about, and I've just never had the chance to ask you about. You mentioned the word freedom. And to me, at this point, I feel that freedom, this idea of like liberation and freedom is something that I'm really focusing on and understanding is at the core of my practice of all this stuff. And I feel like I would really love to hear what your thoughts are on what freedom is, particularly because I know that and you might want to just give some backstory. I won't do it for you, but you have tangoed with lots of different, iterations of freedom and liberation and things called freedom that weren't freedom and very different things. And outside of yoga, just as a general idea, what does being free and liberated mean to you?
This is good because I had this conversation this morning with my therapist. Perfect. Literally had this conversation. It comes to the point, the reason I shared it this morning in therapy was, mourning the loss of friendships, whether it be over the course of the years or this past year, particularly whether it's politically driven or because of pandemic. In that the mourning of those friendships, she's like, well, how can we make it feel better? I'm like, actually, it's bittersweet because now I feel more liberated to share authentically, whereas before I was trying to keep an image. And I jokingly always say when people are like, oh, you're so this or you're so that, or even like when Melanie says, you're so romantic, I'm like, shush, I have an image to uphold, because it's partially joking, partially not, because it's like, it's new to me still to feel these things. And as I'm exploring actively how to feel something new, it feels liberating that I don't have to bullshit about it. I don't have to lie to people like, oh, you just namaste and you'll be fine. You do 108 sun salutations and your world will be so much better. It's like,
your shoulders will hurt too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. If only people knew that chaturanga means shoulder shredders, people wouldn't do them as much. But that's fine. So that to me is liberating, in that I can be authentic. Now I have to be mindful, and I said it this morning. Is like I want to not use it as an excuse to be a dick about things, because I will respond unfavorably sometimes to certain stimulus, and it's nothing more than a regular piece of stimulus. But because I'm contending with new emotions that I never allowed myself to feel, whether it's vulnerability, whether it's sadness, whether it's being present with the pain, I find that it's healing for me, and again, freeing, that I don't have to be like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. Because I don't feel fine. And when I meet up with people, like I ask, like, hey, how's your heart? How's your mind? Like, I want to check in because it's more important than saying, hey, what's up? Everything's good? Good. All right. The family's good. The wife's good. Okay, good. The fuck? Why are we trying this? Then let's not have a conversation. And so that's liberating to me, is to be able to be authentic, to be free to feel, because I think it's a superpower where, yes, do I ingest things to modulate my emotions? Sure. I use cannabis as a means to deal with and contend with physical pain, emotional pain. but I don't do it to the point where I'm drooling. Although drooling is fun sometimes. You know, same thing with drinking. Like, I came to a point where I was only drinking and fighting. Drink, fight, drink, fight, drink, fight. Because I wanted to project my pain. I didn't want to process my pain. And so I think in explaining my emotions has been more freeing than expressing my emotions in this whole crazy practice of yoga, because it is crazy. I get it. Like, I totally get it. From the outside, it's like, y'all are a cult. Then you get it.
Mild cult, mild.
A small little thing, itty bitty. But again, like, and because I don't gatekeep, and because I do shit on some of the hardliners, because again, it's just like, dude, take what works for you, leave what doesn't, you know. But let's be real about it, because I find that, like I said, our last talk, and if I didn't tell you in the last talk, like, if you give yourself the space and the grace to feel your shit, that opens up the door for others to see, like, oh my gosh, this person is doing this thing right now. That's encouraging to me. Like, I'm part of this men's circle. It's like this talk group where we just share our emotions. Like, to see a group of men that are, like, actively trying to do that work. And it's not like, again, choosing words carefully, it's not just a bunch of beta dudes that are just wanting to feely kind of thing. These are guys from different career paths, different setups that are like, yo, I want to do this work. I want to do this emotional work. I want to feel this stuff, and I find that it's detrimental for me not to feel it. That's encouraging to me, because that's my intention, is for others to be like, yo, if this fucking knuckle dragger can allow himself to feel, I can let myself feel too.
That is amazing. I'm so happy to hear that there's a space like that.
Yeah, I think I've received the emails about it. I like what you just said there at the end, that if this knuckle dragger can do it, right? Because that's been sort of my big takeaways, is like, I don't consider myself to be a particularly special person, and I think in the way you said that, it's the same thing. And I mean, if we can do this, then it's not us, right? It's this practice. It's this weird cult.
Oh, and it's
That's
who we really are.
You gotta drink the water.
Kool-Aid. No, I'm kidding.
That's right. Oh man, it's good to see you, dude.
We
Really
love
Great
good
to see you.
so much.
I love you all too much. Too much, damn it.
Yeah, let's feel it. Well, I want to say that before I get carried away in conversation with this person I love so much, that in the link at our bio, it says right there, Practice with Raf. And if you click on it, it will take you right to free practices that Raf has done for United We Om. And all that means is that, like he was sharing, like different ways of being in different spaces. And with United We Om, Raf has shared so much video and audio content, meditation, asana, breathing, that is really trauma responsive. So it's someplace that, no matter where you are on that spectrum of your practice, like Raf was saying today, I love that you said that, though. I wanted to say, like, it's a safe space, but like you said, now I don't want to say that anymore, because we can't promise that. And that's very liberating and freeing, right? Yeah. That we can all try our best to meet in the middle, what's going on with me inside and where you are with you inside, and to try and find a place, like you just said.
There's that safe space. Sorry.
Yeah, like what I heard you say, freedom and liberation was for you. If I could just like crunch it down into one sentence, it was being truly authentic to your experience but not at the cost of injuring others. And I thought the way that you like brought those two pieces together was so beautiful, because it is true, though, that like if we're injuring others, then we probably are not quite like, finding that, because that's not freedom either. So I appreciate the way that you described that. It's changed the way that I'm thinking about it now.
So,
the great responsibility that comes with freedom, right? Yeah. With actual true freedom, in which there are there are no rules, right? Or there are no rulers, there are no people or governing bodies, then that true freedom, like you have to start taking into account the community, to me, in a much greater way. Because for me to be able to act free and for you to do the same, I have to trust that in your freedom, you will choose what is the best for the all.
Liberation, not anarchy, maybe.
Well,
I know,
Anarchy.
Matt likes
time out.
A little bit. No, I'm
Because-
not. It's just that it's the rulers.
Not this conversation, please. We're having a good one now.
Carmen, who we love so much, just wrote, she has always appreciated RAS inclusivity. And
Thank
we
you, Carmen.
agree, Carmen. We completely agree.
Some
So
people
I
would
encourage
completely agree.
you- Well, you know what, though? We can't be all things to all people. And
That's right.
that's another thing you do magnificently, you know, is you are you. And I think that's one of the reasons why you are somebody that at least we love to be around and be with, because
Many people love
it
to
makes
be around.
space for us to be okay with being like the weird, kooky, you know, versions of humans that we are too. And
Weird
so I
and
highly
kooky.
recommend you practice with Wrath. And also, where can they find you and all of your goodness?
Twisted_Om_yoga. That's where I'm at. You'll get a quicker response on a DM than an email. So, hit me there. I'm blessed to share with strangers I've never met, people that I've known for years. I teach. I have a link in my bio with a couple of spots. I'm teaching with Backyard Players and Friends, which is an inclusive-based theater arts yoga group. And then I'm teaching at Samudra Yoga. All those links are on there. And yeah, however I can be of assistance in any way, shape, or form, I'm here to help.
Enjoy those memes. Follow that, because they are good. I look forward to the memes.
Unless
They're
you're
so
offended
good.
easily. If you're offended easily, don't bother. Just pass it for another little time. I did want to just remark on something, not only thanking you both for United We Ohm's creation, but for everyone behind the scenes, for all the supporters that
You're
made,
a part of that, brother. You're a part of that. Part of it. You've been with the team for a long time now.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure, and again, it's a privilege to share space with you all, and thank you for everyone that makes this happen, because I have awesome stories of sharing from 3, 4-year-olds at that one little space we shared at,
Yes.
all the way up to 101 years old. That's because of United We Own. So when people say, I can't do yoga, I'm like, no, you don't want to do yoga, because I've had 3-year-olds do yoga, I've had 101-year-olds, and everyone in between. So you choose your words carefully, folks.
There you go. We love
you all.
So much.
Love you,
Have
bud.
a
So
beautiful
good to see you.
day.
Thanks for talking as always, man. Great to hear your insights.
Don't do anything I would do, kids. Love you.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do twice. All right, brother. Good to see you, man.
Later.
Good to see you.
Thank you.